Hello, Mr. Minnick helping AP Computer Science A students here at Why I'm Missing with String Comparison Worksheet 2. That's a worksheet I created that emphasizes the use of the compare to method in Java from the string class. So here we have a typical AP exam type free response question where you are given the method header and you have to write the code that goes in the body of that method, the implementation of the method. And generally speaking, any way that you get the job done that meets the post condition or gets you full credit on this particular exam. It doesn't have to be particularly efficient, but we always strive for efficiency if we can. So let's first read the specs, read the precondition, and know what the post condition is so that we know what we're supposed to accomplish in this method. The method named smaller should return a string parameter that is less than the other one alphabetically. So let's begin. We have these two parameters, word1 and word2. That's the given information. And I always like to think of those two words with a specific example. Sometimes this gets you in trouble if you don't pick good examples, but let's just pretend word 1 was the word apple, and the word 2, I'm sorry for the sloppy handwriting because I'm using a mouse instead of my stylus digital pen today, so I'll just have to try to be neat. Let's pretend that word 2 is the word banana. And that's long for me to spell, so I'm just going to go with the word but. But, as in B-U-T-T. So, word 1, apple, word 2, but. But they could be other words. This is one test case. So, how are we going to achieve this? Well, we're currently in Unit 3 of my curriculum, which is the unit that focuses on if statements. So, hopefully that you know that an if statement could accomplish this task. So you get partial credit on the AP exam if you know things like, well, an if statement would be used. So even if you just put the empty shell of an if statement, that would get you a little bit of partial credit usually. Furthermore, if you know that there is this method called compare to that works, an attempt to use the compare to method would probably get you full credit. Using a less than or greater than in Java is a no-no. That will not work with strings. It would work with int or double variables, parameters, but not with string parameters. So you might not get any partial credit if you use a less than symbol. Okay, so there is this compare to method. Because it's a method, it is invoked by typing the dot operator in front of it. The member selection operator, there's some fancy name for it, I forget, but dot compare to. You would not hardwire this with the word apple dot compare to because word 1 could be any set of characters that may or may not spell a word. So word 1 is the name of the variable, or in this case the parameter, and you could use word 2 in this spot, but why not just use word 1? This would get full credit. And this is a perfectly proper way to start this. So you're calling the compare to method that is found in the string class of which word 1 is an object from the string class. And this is the usage that earns you credit on the AP exam to know that you type word1 dot compare to and not just simply like compare to or some other way of getting it wrong. Well, compare to, if you look it up in the API or the quick reference cheat sheet that they give you during the AP exam, you'll see that the compare to method itself needs a parameter passed to it. So we need to put something in the parentheses that follows the method named compare to. Well, it turns out that the correct usage here would be to put word2 in the parentheses of compare to. So it's sort of like you're using word 1 and you're making it this object And word2 is the explicit parameter that's being passed in the parentheses to the string class compare2 method. Word1 is called a implicit parameter. Word2 is called an explicit parameter, and that's just terminology that you can read more about in my lecture notes. Okay, so now we're calling the compare2 method, which you could look up somewhere if you had access to the API. I'm going to pause my video. So continuing from where I just paused my video, I know that I need to use the compare2 method, but maybe you don't remember quite how to use it. Well, during the AP exam, you're allowed to use this quick reference manual, and specifically in the string class area, there is a mention of this compare2 method, and you see that it takes a parameter in the parentheses that must be the data type string, and it returns an int, which we'll talk about shortly. And this is how it works, but I'm going to explain that, or you can read my lecture notes to understand how it works. So back to the actual code that we're writing here. Compare2 returns a positive number if word1 is alphabetically greater than word2. Well, you see apple and but. Because of the way strings are compared with the compare2 method in Java, the first letter of apple is being compared to the letter B. And A is not greater than B. So what happens if A is less than B? Well, according to the cheat sheet, if A is less than B, in other words, if the whole word apple is less than the whole word other, a value that's less than 0 is returned as an integer. Now, we don't really care what number is returned. It could be -3, it could be -1,000,000. Right now, I don't want to get into what the negative number is. You can learn more specifically from my lecture notes, or you could go to Oracle's website and find out how compare2 really works in Java. But all we need to know is that it's a negative number. So here's the ingenious way that we typically type this up. Less than 0 is what you would put here to overall have this simplified to a true or a false that you would need for the if statement to work. If you don't put the less than 0 there, you have if parentheses -5 or some negative number, which makes no sense. So you got to check to see if this value, this negative number in this case, is indeed less than 0. If it is, then what are we supposed to do here according to the directions in this problem? Return the string parameter. So a string value must be returned from the method smaller. Don't be confused by the fact that the compare2 method returned an integer value, which we are just simply making use of by putting the less than 0 and all in here. So word1 must be returned because it indeed is the smaller of the two parameters that were passed into this method through the parentheses, through the header statement. Don't forget your semicolon there, even though they probably wouldn't take off on the AP exam. But that's only half the situation. What if the word 2 was less than word 1? What if but, instead of being the value but was stored there, what if it was like the word aardvark? Or, just because I'm tired of writing here, ard. Ard is alphabetically less than apple. Any librarian or anybody that looks on their contact list on their iPhone would know that ard is less than apple. That's because when you have a tie with the first letter in a string comparison, you go to the second batter up, or the second tennis player on the tennis team against the second player on the other tennis team. Well, anyway, the P here, that first P, is alphabetically greater than that A. We know that because of ASCII values, also known as Unicode values. More details are found in other videos on my website on that comparison, but just know that P is greater than the letter A in the alphabet because it comes after the letter A in the alphabet. Well, that guarantees that according to this quick reference API, the compare to method, when the first word is greater than the second word, when the first parameter, the implicit parameter, is greater than the other one that was in the parentheses, word 2, we know that some number greater than 0, some whole number, integer, greater than 0 will be returned. It's basically the opposite of what we just saw here with the previous situation. So ARD being word 2 being less than word 1 means that a positive number. Now don't fall for the bait and put an else here, because what if they're equal? That's a third situation that could occur. So you must know, for full credit on the AP exam, you must know that you should just basically rewrite word1.compare2 and rig it up here in the control expression of the else if. I'm sorry, my bad. I should have put an else if there. And there is indeed a space in between the E and the I. That's the way it works in Java. And don't forget to capitalize your T in the word compare to. And by rewriting word1.compare2 word2, I now have to carefully make sure I'm checking to see if that returned int is greater than 0. If it is, you know what, I'm not in the mood to use curly braces, bad style, but I don't have room here to put the curly braces in. Since there's only one line of code here in this section of the else if, I can simply say return word2. Don't hardwire this code and say return aardvark in double quotes. Then it only works for the word aardvark and it doesn't even make use of word2. That covers all the situations where word 2 is alphabetically less than word 1. The if covered all the other situations, but what if they're tie? What if both words are apple? You're supposed to see the big picture. If you're a coder, if you're a developer, if you're a computer scientist, you should know that there's other test cases where they could be equal to each other. So you could use else and then just return word 1. Because if they're equal, who cares which one you return? They're equal, and word 2 is just as good as word 1. So I could just close this off by typing else indented for good style. Unlike Python, where indentation is crucial, we don't really, on the AP exam, when you're in a hurry, have to indent well, as long as they can read your code. So whether you put word 1 here or word 2, it doesn't matter. This, if you put the curly brace that matches this curly brace, that should be a solution that gets you full credit on the AP exam, and that would work correctly in a Java editor if you want to test it. But some people, instead of writing it out this way, they don't put the else, and they simply write it out that return word 1 is out here on the main line of the method. Because if the if is false and the else if clause is false, then Java will just naturally follow through and execute this last remaining line of code anyway. So that's a trapdoor you're going to fall through if you successfully maneuver around like Mario. Or if you get past this return and you get past this return, guess what? You're going to fall and hit this return, which is what you want to do. You want to finish the method. And this is just the tighter, better logical way to do it. You'll see more professional coders kind of end with this. Now, I can't stand seeing inconsistency, so I'm going to put curly braces in there around that return word 1. Okay, make sure you get all your curly braces right. This is a great way to do it. If they guarantee you that these are different from each other, if you're guaranteed by the precondition that word 1 and word 2 are not equal, then you could have just wrote this if and put return word 2. You wouldn't have needed this else clause. If you were guaranteed in the precondition that word 1 and word 2 are unique, meaning different. Sometimes you're given extra preconditions that you can take advantage of to write shorter code. So this is not the correct answer in my best interpretation of the given directions. But every once in a while, students argue with me that, well, they think you can assume certain things in life. I disagree because I'm, well, older and wiser. I've seen more, so I'm usually ready for all variations. If you don't like the else, you could also always do compare to double equals 0 here. So if you had else if word1 dot compare to word2 double equals 0, that just takes advantage of the fact that in the API, you are guaranteed that the compare to method returns a specific integer value 0 if the two parameters are equal to each other. It is kind of weird that I say two parameters when, in this situation, word1 is a parameter that's not in the parentheses. It's called the implicit parameter, and word2 is the explicit. So anyway, they are both parameters, technically speaking, of compare to. Okay, hopefully you can figure out this mess. Somewhere in that last discussion, I had a correct answer that you could turn in for this worksheet. I'm not going to do this one for you in this video. Hopefully the help I just gave you could help you with this. Do know that spaces are characters, and they can be searched for using the index of method, and using the substring method, we could successfully parse this parameter word. So good luck with that, but as a strong hint, as I finish off this video that hopefully has at least 5 views tonight, index of, substring are both string methods that would be best used in this answer. And what the heck, you probably will need to use string concatenation, which in Java involves the use of the plus symbol. All of that would be explained on the AP exam cheat sheet if you're a student that didn't know about that existence. This is Mr. Minnick signing off the string comparison worksheet number 2 video.